Hello and welcome to this week's edition of South Coast End Zone. I'm Tim Weisberg.
I'm Laurie Loss.
We're here to talk with you about all the local South Coast high school football action. Week 8?
Yes.
Wow. Where did the time go? It seems like just 8 weeks ago we were sitting here to do the first one.
You know, I think it was 8 weeks ago.
Shows you how good I am at math, surprisingly. How did I become a writer? So we have a lot of games here in what is essentially the final week of the regular season.
Yeah, it's I think we find out this coming weekend, you know, who's in, who's out as far as the playoffs, who everyone's going to be playing next week, because even if you didn't make the playoffs, you know, your team still has a couple games left before Thanksgiving. So I think a lot of us, we're all in the same boat. We're all trying to figure this out. I talked to some of the coaches. You know, they're not sure exactly who's in and who's out. A lot of it has to do with the power rankings. I know Voc Tech, I think Voc Tech, if they beat Bourne this week, they win that B tier, and they're in. And that's because of that. But as far as Apponequet and Old Rochester, I think it has a lot to do with their ratings, because they've decided not to do the conference title.
Oh, if I put this on.
Also, you know, Dartmouth has a shot of getting in, even though, you know, it looks like they're not going to win the OCL championship. You know, I know they're going to be playing Barnstable this week, pretty much for the title, because it would be a three-way tie if they were able to upset the Red Raiders. But they can still get in because of, you know, the teams that they've played and the amount of points that they have. And so I think it's going to be interesting. We should find out Sunday night who's in and who's out. And
so you know about as much as we do.
Yeah, we don't know anything at this point.
and so basically the way it's going to go then is everything after this week, if you're a playoff team, you're playing a playoff game.
Yes.
And if you're not a playoff team, you're playing like a consolation game type of thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. But everybody will be playing. They'll just find other consolation teams to play each other. And
Yep.
Okay. Have fun, MIAA. It was your idea. Okay, well, the important thing, though, to focus on for this week, though, is that we do have a full slate of games. So we have to get into each and every one of those, but we're going to start things off with Laurie's first and goal.
Okay, first and goal. On first down, Cross Nagalia scored 3 touchdowns on runs of 2, 34, and 3 yards to help Fairhaven win its third straight game. Second down, Hector Diaz had 16 carries for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Jonathan Morales recorded 152 rushing yards on 12 carries with 3 touchdowns to lift New Bedford past Dartmouth. Third down, Richie Phillips led the undefeated Bulldogs past Wareham with 208 yards on 10 carries and 3 touchdowns for Old Rochester's first win at Splain Field since 2002. Fourth down, Weston Cohen powered Apponequet past Bourne by scoring 5 touchdowns. 4 on the ground, along with 10 carries for 195 yards. And the player/players of the week is Bishop Stang's defense. For the 4th straight week, the Spartans' defense held an opponent under 10 points. And this week it led them to a 14-7 victory over Bishop Feehan, the Spartans' first win over the Shamrocks since 2006. It also set the stage for this Saturday's showdown with Somerset Berkeley that will be for the EAC title.
Nice. So there you go. The entire defense, and they've been playing excellent all season. So.
I guess it's good that we haven't gotten a prize yet, because we'd have to give it out to all the kids, right?
Right. So if the prize was, you know, like a free pizza, then the defense would have to share a pizza.
Yeah, I guess we could do that, yeah.
Because that's how cheap we are. All right, remember, too.
It's not one pizza for every kid. I was thinking that. But
No. What are you, crazy?
Would one pizza be enough? Probably not.
We only sell newspapers. They only cost $1.
I know.
Well, we also want you to follow us online and on social media at SC_varsity on Twitter, SouthCoastVarsity.com on Facebook. You can like us there. You can follow along on Vine. Is it at South Coast Varsity on Vine?
Maybe. I'm sure. I don't know.
You'll find it. If you go to the Twitter, you'll find the Vines.
Yeah. I've been Vining every game since we set up the Vine account. Andrew Tornetta, compliments of Andrew, and it goes right into the Twitter feed. So
right.
You know, and if you don't have Vine, it's pretty easy to set up yourself and start.
See, that's why I'm trying to get you on the Instagram, because you can set that up so that'll automatically go to the Twitter too.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though you're going to take a picture and you're going to tweet that picture, you can take it on Instagram, and it's basically the same process, and you're getting it on 2 different accounts.
Yeah, but I have my own Instagram private one, so then would I be able to have 2 apps on my phone?
There's probably an app for that.
Okay.
But
there's an app for that.
I've started Instagramming a little bit too, and I Instagrammed a picture from King Richard's Fair of me and Gene Simmons from Kiss in full makeup. I don't think it was the real Gene Simmons though.
No.
No, and for some reason he was on the stage with the King's Court during the joust. I don't know why. But whatever. Maybe he'll show up at one of these big games this week because we have a lot of them. Starting off with Dartmouth at Barnstable. That's a 6 p.m. game on Friday night. Remember Barnstable? Remember what they did earlier in the season to New Bedford?
Yeah, I remember that was definitely a tough game for the Whalers back then. But Barnstable, they opened the season, with a loss, and they've actually won 5 straight since then. And they lost to Dennis Yarmouth in week 1, but over their 5 wins, they've outscored the opposition 119-75, and they're actually coming off a win over Bridgewater Raynham last week. So they're kind of going into that game. Bridgewater Raynham had the win over Dartmouth. They were 1-0. Dartmouth 0-1 in the league. Barnstable 0-0. Now they handed Bridgewater Raynham the loss. So pretty much, if Barnstable beats Dartmouth, they win the OCL. So it's Dartmouth's chance to kind of upset Barnstable, but it's always tough, going to Hyannis and
I was going to say, I'd feel better about this game if it was at Dartmouth.
Yeah, I would too. And last week against Bridgewater Raynham, Hayden Murphy, he scored both 2 touchdowns for Barnstable, and he finished with 14 carries for 124 yards. So he's going to have to be the focal point for Dartmouth's defense, which last week looked pretty good in the first half against New Bedford. The Indians were up at halftime by 7, but they came out in the second half and they turned over the ball on back-to-back possessions, and New Bedford ended up scoring 14 straight points off of those turnovers. And the rushing attack for Dartmouth, which seems like it's been strong almost every game, was held to just 109 yards total. And the interesting part about last week's game is Blaine Almeida and Matt Boparlin, they split time at quarterback. It almost seemed like, Rick White took something from Dennis Golden's book by having the quarterbacks in, and when he wanted to pass, he kind of had, Blaine Almeida in there, and then when they wanted to try and focus on the rushing attack, he had Boparlin in there, and Boparlin had a rushing touchdown, Blaine Almeida had 2 passing touchdowns, so it worked. It just was the turnovers. I mean, that, when you give up when you're giving up the ball in back-to-back possessions, the other team scores both times. I mean, it puts you, in a bad position. And I know last week, Connor Tavares, who's been the leading running back since Chris Martin went out, he had actually injured himself in practice earlier in the week. He's tried to play the game. He only had 6 carries for 6 yards, and he didn't see any action in the second half. So we'll see how he is this week, but he had a hamstring injury. So.
All right, so that is Dartmouth at Barnstable, 6 p.m. Friday night. 7 p.m. on Friday night, Fairhaven at Dighton Rehoboth, and Fairhaven's got to be feeling their oats a little bit here.
Yeah, well, the Blue Devils, they've won 3 in a row. I know they opened the season 0-3, but they won 3 in a row. And Kevin Albano, he's been the guy that's been getting it done. The prior 2 weeks. This past week, he had 28 yards on 21 carries, but he didn't find the end zone. That's because Cross Nagalia found it 3 times. That was his first 3 touchdown game of his career. He also finished with over 100 yards rushing. And quarterback Cam Charette, who I know all season we've kind of been talking about how, he's such a great athlete, Cam. He finally got his first touchdown pass of the year. It was a 6-yard strike to David Santos Jr. So, I mean, Fairhaven is playing well at this point. And I know they want to finish out this regular season strong. You can't get any stronger than going to Dighton Rehoboth and trying to beat the Falcons on their home turf. The Falcons are actually coming off a bye, and that followed the loss to Old Rochester a couple weeks ago. And the Falcons are actually averaging 26.5 points per game this year, but they're giving up nearly 21 points a game. So
there's not a lot of margin of error there.
No, there isn't. And they're led by quarterback Nathan Kowalski, running backs Kyle Rose, and Norman Manchester. So those are going to be the key guys that Fairhaven's defense is going to have to focus on trying to stop. But right now, I mean, I think that the Blue Devils have a lot of confidence. It's always tough because Dighton Rehoboth is always a strong team, but they're riding into this game with momentum. So.
Right, so it's Fairhaven at Dighton Rehoboth, 7 p.m. on Friday. Also 7 p.m. on Friday, Apponequet at Wareham. And I don't have much faith in my Vikings in this one, sorry.
Yeah, Wareham didn't look so great last week against Old Rochester. And I think Old Rochester wanted to make a statement in that game. I know we'd kind of hyped up that game as, Old Rochester hadn't beaten Wareham at Splain Field in it seemed like a million years.
As long as Henry Quinlan has been there.
Yeah. But the Vikings did avoid the shutout last week against Old Rochester. Nate Moore scored on a 36-yard touchdown run, and he has 3 touchdowns this year for Wareham, so he's kind of been a bright spot for them. But the Vikings allowed the Bulldogs to rack up 494 total yards of offense, including 400 in the first half. With that being said, they face a Pontiac team that's just as potent. Yeah, I mean last week we weren't sure. I mean, I think everyone, if you talked to, thought, okay, Pontiac's going to beat Bourne last week, but at the same time, without Cam Charette, who was serving the 1-game suspension, we weren't exactly sure if there was going to be some hiccups in the offense with a backup playing. But Weston Cohen just took over that game. Like I said earlier, he had 4 rushing touchdowns, almost 200 yards rushing. He also caught a touchdown pass. Matt Michael had a couple touchdowns. And I think Apponequet they had 8 possessions, and they scored on all 8 possessions. So there was really no doubt in that game for Apponequet, and I don't think there's going to be much doubt this week.
No slight to the old Rochester defense, but I think that the Lakers have a stronger defense. Yeah. So it's even less likely that Wareham's going to be able to get on the board.
But you know what? You never know late, when reserves
they've got third string.
Yeah, you don't know. So,
no.
And I'm pretty sure that's when Wareham scored against Old Rochester.
And not to put anybody down, but that's just the reality of the situation this year.
Yeah, and you don't, as a team that's losing too, when it's 40-45-0, you would hope that the other team would not be playing their starters in the fourth quarter. It's just kind of, I think it's kind of that non-spoken, coaches.
Because the other team still has goals that they're trying to meet, even if they're down 45 points. So.
Yeah, and they're trying to improve. So.
All right, so that is Apponequet at Wareham, 7 p.m., Spillane Field. Seekonk at Old Rochester, 7 p.m. And so this is a chance for Old Rochester to keep chugging along and proving that they are the best team.
6-0 overall, 5-0 in the conference. I have to admit this. I'm going to see the Bulldogs this week. First time this season. It's taken this long for me to go see them.
That's because Andrew was on the beat.
Well, Andrew was on the beat, and there was just other games that I got.
You were on the Dartmouth beat.
Dartmouth beat, yep, and so it's kind of I'm excited. I'm excited to see the Bulldogs and see what they're all about. Like I said, they're coming off that big win over Wareham last week, and really they set the tone early. I think they were out to like a 42-0 lead in that first half and just kind of cruised. Richie Phillips, had over 200 yards rushing, the 3 touchdowns. All that happened in the first 20 minutes. I think he sat out most of the second half. I think the Bulldogs, they were without Raekwon Phillips and Colin Napton, so we'll see if those guys are healthy this week. But I think for Old Rochester, obviously, the playoffs are on the players' minds. It's coming up, it's close. There's, I don't even know what the percentage is, I'd say, but they should be in the playoffs. None of us really know what's going on. But you don't want to look past a Seekonk team that's decent.
Especially a SouthCoast Conference game, if you have designs on winning the title, whatever it might mean in the end.
Yeah, so I think that this might be one of those games where, Coach Henry Quinlan's going to be like, come on, guys, we got to focus, which if they come out the way they did last week against Wareham, they should be able to beat Seekonk, which Seekonk has won 3 of its last 4 games. Last week they played St. Joseph Central. I don't even know if that's a Massachusetts school or whatever.
Pretty sure,
Yeah, I've never heard of them before. But in that game, Nick Lancelletti, the quarterback, he had 2 touchdown passes. He has thrown 8 scoring strikes this year, so he's been the one that's got a lot of the offense going for Seekonk this year. The Warriors are averaging 33 points per game, but the defense is giving up 21 points a game. So they're struggling a little bit defensively to stop teams. But it should be a good game, and be interesting to see how the Bulldogs are able to finish out this regular season portion of the schedule, and I know they want to take momentum into the playoffs.
So that is Seekonk at Old Rochester, 7 p.m. on Friday, and our final Friday night game with a 7:30 start is Greater New Bedford Voc Tech at Bourne. Any reason why it's a 7:30 start?
I have no clue, and it was originally scheduled for 7, but I just got an email sent over today that was changed to 7:30. So I don't know why it's been changed, but it has. So
no bridge traffic this time of year.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they want to just make it more difficult on newspapers to make deadlines. I don't know.
I think so. Cape Cod Times, thanks for coming.
Yeah, well, the Bears are actually coming off a bye week following their lopsided win over Case. And in that game, Sean Aldrich, Nick Richard, and Dimitri Woodbury, they each scored a rushing touchdown, and then Aldridge caught a touchdown pass from Richard in that game. And really, the Bears, I know we were a few weeks ago, when they lost to DR, we were kind of saying, all right, they need to win their final two to make the tournament. They beat Case, now Bourne's in front of them. If they beat Bourne, they've finished as the, top team in that B tier of the conference, and they should be in the tournament. So, this is a big game for the Bears. They face a Bourne team that had trouble stopping Aponequid last week. I know we talked about, the Lakers. They allowed the Lakers to score in all 8 of their possessions, and they gave up over 400 rushing yards. It was the second time this year the Canalmen have given up 50 or more points in a game. So, I would be surprised if Vogue Tech didn't come home with a victory, even though it'll be late at night because it's a half hour later and it's in Bourne.
They will have to watch out for Marsh, but other than that, that's kind of their offense. It's their whole offense. So, of course, you're playing in the pit.
Yeah, you love the pit.
I hate the pit.
You love it.
I despise the pit.
That's where you like to spend Thanksgiving
I think I have to spend Thanksgiving there this year. I think it's at Bourne this year. So Saturday, it's actually faster for me to get there, though, from my house than it is to get to Wareham High. So, whatever. So that's Friday's games. Let's go to Saturday's games. The first one will be Old Colony at Holbrook, 12 p.m. And, the Cougars want to end this season on an up note, I think.
Yeah, and I really think that they have a shot this week against Holbrook Avon, which has yet to win a game this year. They've played 4 games. They're 0-4. They've lost by a combined 151-24. So they haven't scored much this year. But 3 of Holbrook Avon's 4 touchdowns have come on throws by Sean Manning, their quarterback. But Holbrook has only scored 6 points in all 4 games. So that's good news for Old Colony, which has struggled the last few weeks.
But they can put up points.
Yeah, they can put up points. But, last week I know Old Colony was trying to establish a ground attack against Nantucket, struggled against, a much bigger Nantucket team. The players were a lot bigger than the Old Colony players. They only had 8 first downs in that game, and they had negative 7 yards rushing, for the game. So I think facing a Holbrook Avon team that hasn't won, that's struggling even more so, that's good news for Old Colony, which has proven that the Cougars can get the job done through the year with Jake Pringle. Once again, he had a touchdown pass. It was to Drew Mayer for 39 yards. It was Pringle's 13th touchdown pass of the season. So he just keeps on increasing his school record, for TD passes in the season as they go along. But I know he'd much rather see Old Colony win than him throw a touchdown pass. But I think he's going to have a couple TD passes this week, and the Cougars are going to get back on track. So.
All right, so that is at 12 p.m., Old Colony at Holbrook. 1 p.m., Bishop Stang at Somerset. And, maybe the Spartans can win Players of the Week again this week.
Well, it's funny. Every week, Monday, Tuesday, I start to think, okay, what's the game of the week? And, any week that it's New Bedford-Brockton, I think people are, that's an automatic, no matter what New Bedford's record is or Brockton's record is. But, this Bishop Stang Somerset Berkeley game, it really feels like the game of the week, especially after Bishop Stang came out last week against Bishop Fien, got the first win over the Shamrocks since 2006. The defense, like I said earlier, that won the Players of the Week, held an opponent to under 10 points for the 4th straight week. The offense was led by Matt Golden, who had both touchdowns. He also had 88 yards rushing. He did have, I think it was 23 carries, so he had to grind it out. There was no big gains. It was kind of one of those grinding games. But I think really, Stang just, is. I know on Twitter some of the kids are saying, nobody respects us and nobody thinks we're going to win and we're proving everybody wrong. But I feel like they've kind of taken that on their back, like, we want to prove people wrong. And I think I sat here last week saying, I like Stang, but I don't know if I like the Matt Fien. They proved me wrong. Now they're at Somerset Berkeley this week with the championship on the line, because if they win, they get the title, if they can, because Somerset Berkeley is undefeated in the conference, but they would both finish with the same record and they'd have the head-to-head. So, Bishop Stang, this is the time, let's stand up, let's kind of, silence the critics one more time, right?
What would John Darling say?
Spartan Village.
There you go.
But Somerset Berkeley, even though they opened the season with 3 straight losses, they've won 3 straight games, and all 3 of those victories have come over EAC opponents. So they're 3-0 in the conference. And they've outscored the EAC competition 90-14, including last week's 32-0 loss to Martha's Vineyard. And if we remember a few weeks ago, Stang lost to Martha's Vineyard. They shut I think the Vineyarders out for the first like the whole regulation, but then I think it was in overtime they lost. There was so many close games between.
No, I think that one was definitely overtime.
I think that was the overtime one. So maybe if the Stang's offense can get some points on the board, they have a shot at winning the EAC. So it should be an exciting game. I mean, and it's like you're gonna have to choose. If you're a local fan, do you want to go to New Bedford High and watch a Brockton game, which I know is going to be exciting,
especially that's for the Big Three championship.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much, yeah. Or if you want to, go to Somerset Berkeley, you can watch that game as well, and that's for the title. It's exciting to have two games that mean so much on a Saturday in October.
I wonder which game Dennis Golden's going to go to.
I think he's going to go to his game. Yeah.
Which is the next game that we'll talk about. But first, just a reminder: Bishop Stang at Somerset, 1 p.m. Also 1 p.m. on Saturday is Brockton at New Bedford, and I had said that this is for the Big Three title, and really it is because I don't know if Brockton's played Durfee yet.
Yep, they have.
They beat them handily.
40-7 last week.
And I'm sure that New Bedford will beat Durfee handily.
On Thanksgiving, most likely. Yep, there's a good chance that would happen. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting too because I know in the Big Three this year with the new playoff system, they decided, they didn't want to move the New Bedford Durfee game to this regular season, or they didn't want to play them twice.
Yeah, it's been like 2,000 years that they've played on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, over 100. So what they decided is the Big Three champion won't be the representative, of the conference, especially because they only have the 3 teams. So it would be more based on the rankings, the power rankings. So, I mean, this game still has a lot because I know both teams want to finish as the Big Three champs. But I think there's another way that it would work that if New Bedford loses the game, then Brockton does clinch the Big Three outright because they'd be 2-0 and both the other teams. But I still think that they don't do it based on the overall on the league champ. It's based on the power rankings. But we'll all find this out next week when when everything comes out. But this should be an exciting game. Last week's win over Durfee for Brockton, it ended a 2-game losing streak in which the Boxers were shut out. Listen to that, shut out by BC High and Xaverian. 2 really tough teams, 2 of the top teams in the state. But, the Boxers are going to be hungry. I mean, they have, I know they scored 40 points last week, but when they were shut out back-to-back weeks, they're kind of on their Big Three schedule right here to finish out the season. They have scored 30 or more points twice this season, and Jamal Williams, he had 2 of Brockton's 6 touchdowns against Durfee. He has 5 scores in the season. But New Bedford, looked like an inspired team last week against Dartmouth. I was at that game, and they all season they've kind of been splitting time between Chandler DeBras and Brandon Costa. Both are great quarterbacks, but this past week they said we're going to go with Chandler. We're going to go with him the whole game. See what he can do, and they focused more on the rushing attack. Which was good to see because kids like Hector Diaz and Jonathan Morales, they really got going. Those 2 guys combined for over 325 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean that's a performance. That's definitely a impressive performance. And they had to rally. It was kind of that first half. It was 7-0, 7-7, 14-7. And they were down going into the third quarter, and they took advantage of those turnovers by Dartmouth. But really, the Whalers came out and established themselves in the second half. And DeBras, his numbers weren't, gaudy. They weren't. You didn't look at him and say, "Oh my God!" But he threw a touchdown pass to Kevin Nunes, and he just managed the offense really well. So I think, we might see him again this week. Again against a Brockton team that, hey, if you can run the ball and you can keep Brockton off the field, that bodes well for the Whalers. So that should be an exciting game as well. It's going to be tough to pick, if you're a local fan, what game you're going to go to.
Right. Maybe they'll just go to Old Colony at Holbrook instead, split the tie,
Yeah, maybe. They could, maybe.
Except Holbrook's kind of a hike.
Yeah, that is a little far. I go to one of the local games before I...
So let's run down the slate of games again. Friday's games, Dartmouth at Barnstable, 6 p.m. Fairhaven at Titan Rehoboth, 7 p.m. Apponequet at Wareham, 7 p.m. Seekonk at Old Rochester, 7 p.m. Greater New Bedford Voc-Tech at Bourne, 7:30 p.m. So you have a little bit of extra time to grab some dinner on the way. Saturday's games, Old Colony at Holbrook, 12 p.m. And then both at 1 p.m., Bishop Stang at Somerset and Brockton at New Bedford. So that about does it for this week. Anything that you want to add?
No, that we're just excited about the new playoff format, and
Now starts the playoffs for the hot chocolate too, which
Yes.
there's been no regular season action.
Well, I tried to get hot chocolate at New Bedford, and the line, if you follow us on Vine or saw it on Twitter, it was, I don't know, 200 people, 300 people in line, and I passed.
You just have to flash the press pass.
Yeah, I don't want to use that and cut in front of people.
Why not? You use it when you go to the movies. You're like, I'm here to review this for the Standard Times.
I've never done that.
That's not what I heard.
I have never done that.
Here's what you do if you want to get.
I have cut in line to get into a game, and if I'm running late.
Oh,
with
you
my
always
press
do that.
pass.
No, you don't wait in line ever if you have a press pass.
Yeah.
Never wait in line. Ever. You're there to do a job. You can't
Anyway,
be wasting time waiting in line.
At Old Rochester this Friday night, since I know you guys don't have a press box there, I am going to be coming down at halftime to get some hot chocolate because it's going to be cold. I can already tell it's going to be the coldest night of the fall. So make sure you have it nice and hot.
Have it ready. And you could just go up to the side door of the booth and be like, "Hi, I just want to grab a hot chocolate. I have to get back up to the press box. I'm on limited time," and they will take care of you.
They might.
And nobody in the line will mind. They understand. They want to be able to read the coverage the next day. They don't want you to get hypothermia and not be able to read
That is true. That is true.
All right, so you can follow us on Twitter at SC_varsity. Follow us on Vine, South Coast Varsity there. SouthCoastVarsity.com on Facebook. So many different ways to find out chocolate and the football.
Yeah.
So that about does it for this week's show. Until next week, we will see you under the lights.
And in the end zone.